Douglas Murray, in recent days you've been praised by Donald Trump as my friend. Now that presidency, a bit of a firestorm. You think of tariffs, you think of the bond markets. What's your assessment of the Trump presidency?
I'm not sure that people should be surprised. One of the things that people should realise by now is that even Trump's critics concede that he does what he says he's going to do. And on the campaign trail, when I went to Trump rallies to write about them, I noticed that, tariffs were always in there. You know this. The tariff issue, always something he said he was going to do. He's now doing what he said he was going to do, and people are surprised and shocked.
Now, you've got something in common with Donald Trump, which is that you both appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Ah, yes.
Although your experience was rather different. Let's just listen to this clip.
I feel you've opened the door to quite a lot of people who've now got a big platform, who have been throwing out counter-historical stuff of a very dangerous kind.
So what exactly is Joe Rogan doing wrong? Who's he platforming incorrectly?
Well, Joe Rogan's a friend. I've been on his podcast many times, but I really wanted to know why he'd been giving a platform to only one side in the debate about the Russia-Ukraine war. That is, he's sort of only had, as far as I can see, critics of Ukraine's defensive action. Likewise, he seems to have only had critics of Israel on and no people who are, like me, defenders of Israel's reaction to the aggression of Hamas. And there's a third thing, which is the strange historical revisionists that he's also had on his show. I'm not trying to shut down anyone's debate or discussion, and I'm all for historical, inquiry, and like many people, I thrive on that. However, if you start pushing people who claim, for instance, that Churchill was the chief villain of World War II, and you don't counter that with responsible mainstream historians who can show you that that is ahistorical BS, I think you're misleading your viewers at some level. And I mean, a lot of people on the American right have worried about this for a long time. A lot of people on the American right didn't want to call out Joe Rogan or ask him about this. I felt I couldn't not do it.
Now, in your book, you talk about how Hamas is a pro-death cult movement, and you talk about how some of their language has been absorbed in the West. You talk about those protests taking place at US and indeed UK universities, and you're saying that if the West is not careful, I think you talk about how this misplaced Western sympathy could embolden forces that perpetuate a culture of violence. What do you mean by that?
Well, Hamas is self-confessedly a death cult. It worships death. It glorifies in death. It praises and seeks death. In the aftermath of October 7th, many people passed over Hamas's actions and got straight onto the issue of the Israeli counteraction. I didn't want the realities, the facts of what happened on the 7th to get lost in any way. Many people have done great reporting and journalism in the aftermath of that atrocity to put together what happened that day. But I spent most of the last 18 months there speaking to families, speaking to survivors, going around the hospitals, the morgues even, and finding out from the people hiding in their homes, from people who were slaughtering their relatives, right the way up through the Israeli war cabinet and much more. I've tried to piece together what happened on the day. And then my first-hand account of the war that has resulted. But the third thing, which the book is really about, which goes to your question, is that I believe that something has been revealed in our own societies in the West, in Britain and America and elsewhere, which is deeply concerning. This was an attack by a death cult on a democracy, the slaughter of 1,200 people in the most barbaric fashion, the taking of 250 hostages, stealing them from their homes and holding them and torturing them, some still there, like 21-year-old Edan Alexander from New Jersey. And that death cult attacked the citizens of a liberal democracy like ours. And instead of siding with the liberal democracy, many people in countries like Britain sided with the death cult. They sided with Hamas.
And you have been obviously writing about this issue for 10, 20 years or so, and writing about Islamic extremism in this country. And in 2017, after the Manchester Arena bombing, you talked about, because of that threat of Islamic extremism, we should have less Islam in this country. Was that a wise phrase, talking about less Islam?
Well, I think it's perfectly wise phrase, perfectly open to misrepresentation. I think I said it at the encouragement of the BBC.
Well, I'm reading your article.
It was
you
on the
wrote
BBC.
In
yes,
the Sun.
It was on the BBC. That's why.
I'm quoting what you said in the Sun. Less Islam. Surely, less Islam means less people of the Muslim faith. That means less Sajid Javids, less Sadiq Khans.
Well, that
it
depends.
means anyone who's a Muslim. That's what it means, isn't it? Isn't that provocative?
I mean, it would also mean less people like the Abedi family, wouldn't it?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, exactly.
But the point is, you're talking about less Islam. That is Muslim people.
No. Just bear with me, because I know better than you what I think. This country has had a wildly stupid and lax immigration policy for decades. And we allowed people like the Abedi family, a family of jihadists who'd fallen out with Colonel Gaddafi because they were from rival jihadist groups. When the Abedi family fell out with Colonel Gaddafi, they came first to London and then to Manchester. And one of the sons they gave this country was Salman Abedi, who at the age of 22 killed 22 young girls at the Manchester Arena in a suicide bomb. One, by the way, for every year of life this country gave him. His brothers just stabbed and thrown boiling oil at 3 prison wards. Let me bear with you. Why were the Abedi? Hang on. Why were the Abedi family in the UK? Why is nobody interested in asking that? And I'll tell you what the problem here is. There are lots of types of extremism. You get far-right extremism, far-left extremism. When it comes to jihadist extremism, jihadism comes from Islam. Therefore, if it's 1%, 5%, 15% of people of the Muslim faith who follow that version of it, you've got a hell of a problem. And the more people, the larger, this is simple math, the larger the number of people who are followers of a faith that has not solved the extremism problem in its midst or drawn suitable lines, the more extremism you will have. You don't get that from the Catholic Church in 2023 or 4. You don't get it from the Methodists. You won't get it from the Quakers, and you won't get it from the Anglican Church.
Of course, there is a problem with fundamentalism and Islamic extremism.
And fundamentalist Islam comes from
Islam, you're saying less of everyone, which means less Sajid David, less Sadiq Khan.
No,
and you're stereotyping
no problem
everyone.
at all with Sajid. No, of course it's not stereotyping. I mean, this is a kind of dated conversation to my mind, because this is all being addressed elsewhere as we speak. And nobody else is as incredibly slow in learning as the British media and political class when it comes to this problem. Why is it the case that Saturday after Saturday we have thousands of people going through major British cities who support the death cults who would murder Jews and the rest of us next? That's a question you and I and Newsnight should answer.
Douglas Murray, thank you for talking to Newsnight.
It's a pleasure.
That was Douglas Murray talking to me earlier. Joe, I mean, you'll presumably agree with Douglas Murray that there is a problem with Islamic extremism. We all want to combat that. But what did you think of what he had to say about less Islam?
Well, I think you were charitable in saying that he was talking to you earlier. I mean, he was sneering in a very self-satisfied way with a extreme arrogance. I think, frankly, his contribution there was actually about sowing division, about trying to pit groups of people against each other. There is no contradiction, nor should anyone say that there is, between being appalled at the acts of October the 7th, of the atrocities that Hamas carried out, and also being appalled at the violence meted out to children in Gaza hospitals. I think most people watching this show would feel appalled and horrified at both of those circumstances. And part of the problem here is when people are told they have to choose a side. Actually, this is about whether or not you're taking the side of division, or whether or not you want to have the side of people getting along and, you know, living alongside one another in a country, as most people want to do and as mostly happens. And I think, frankly, the message that he is peddling is one of division that is deeply unhelpful.
Anita, do you think that Douglas Murray has a point? He talks about how we have a wildly stupid and relaxed immigration policy that has meant that fundamentalists have come to this country, have been fostered in this country by some organisations. Do you think he has a point, or do you have a problem with him talking about less Islam?
Well, I mean, I think that the idea that we only get extremists from abroad is not accurate or borne out by the facts. And I think he makes an interesting point about like how well we integrate. I think that was sort of the point he was trying to make about integration as a society and how we can better understand one another. But honestly, it felt like quite a lot of that was not explained in terms of this is his view that maths apparently accounts for the fact that there might be some people that are extremists, therefore all the people that belong to that group in the broader sense, there should be less of them. I just don't think is an argument that is really about bringing people together or even trying to come up with a solution.
And Matthew, Donald Trump is quite keen on Douglas Murray, my friend.
He certainly is. He's been promoting his book. Douglas Murray is a man who has said of Humza Yousaf, who was the First Minister of Scotland, that he had infiltrated the British political system. Humza Yousaf is someone who was born in Britain, born in Scotland. This man is an extremist, in my view, and the Overton window, which we talked about earlier, has shifted so significantly that, and I don't criticise Newsnight for doing it, that he has been given an 8-minute interview on prime BBC television. And that is concerning because more and more people, it seems to me, share his repulsive views. Imagine, just for a moment, Nick, being one of the millions of British Muslims, law-abiding British Muslims, watching him say those things.
We did question him.